In this demonstration, we're going to build a workflow with SharePoint Designer that works on this products list. So let's open the site in SharePoint Designer first of all, and what I will do first, before we create the workflow, is just to set a property of the products list that says to require content approval for submitted items, so that new products are not automatically approved but will go through our workflow for the approval process. So now let's start building our workflow. I can go to the workflow section and click the new button, and we will provide a name of Approve New Product, and I'll click OK, and SharePoint Designer will start our workflow creation process for us. It contacts SharePoint Server to download necessary information to start with that it will use when we are in the Workflow Designer in SharePoint Designer 2010. I'm going to go to the Initiation Forms parameter, and I'm going to create two parameters. The first one is going to be an approver email, and the default type of single line of text is fine. I will provide a default value, however, of admin@contoso.com and then click Finish. And I will create another parameter that will be populated at initiation time. We will call it Max Selling Price. This time we will choose a numeric type, and what we will do is to validate these new products based on their selling price. When I go to my Local Variables dialog, I can add a new one, and this one will be called simply Selling Price. So what we will do is compare this variable selling price to the initiation forms parameter of max selling price. So let's put an action in first of all, and what we'll do is set a workflow variable. We'll set selling price to the selling price field in the current item, i.e. the item that is being passed through the workflow. So we can very straightforwardly extract data from list items and populate our variables in workflows just by using this visual designer. So we don't need to do any coding for this, but the net effect is that we can have coding type logic. So there we've set the variable selling price to the value of the selling price column, and now we can start making decisions. So we will say, let's choose our selling price variable, and if that's greater than the maximum selling price from the initiation form, then we can perform some certain actions. So we have our condition. Let's insert an action. The first action I want to do is set the content approval status to rejected. As we do this, we can also add comments. So we could add a suitable comment to the rejection saying something like, our marketing campaign currently prohibits products where their selling price is over the maximum selling price. And in our case, that will be a $3,000 value. So we will put that in. Later in this module, we will work with some different demos that will allow the user to specify the maximum selling prices and so forth as part of the workflow. But for this very first example, we will just stick with that. Now, if the selling price is not greater than the maximum selling price, well, we can start doing additional actions. So again, we will set the approval status, but we will set it to pending this time, and our comments will be awaiting approval from, and we can start extracting other variables from our workflow. So we can find the approver's email address, which was in our initiation form, and extract that. So we can work with these values within the workflow. We will add another action, which is to assign a to-do item. So our to-do item will be to create a task that tells the approver that there's a product that needs their approval. When I click to-do item, we get our task wizard appearing in SharePoint Designer, and we can provide the name of the task. So this is a task that gets stored in the task list associated with the workflow. Now I can choose a lookup for the current user to be assigned to, and we will choose the approver's email as the parameter and initiation form to be used in the assigned to. Now we can just publish this workflow, and we will save it, validate it, check it for errors, and publish it up to SharePoint Server in one go. It's not the most complicated workflow in the world, but it's relatively functional. We've had variables, initiation parameters, and we've made some decisions based on those. So let's try it out. We will go and add a new item to our products list. Let's call it Sports Bike 2010. Our manufacturer, well, we'll stick with AdventureWorks, and we will put in a selling price that is more than the current maximum selling price. So now let's start the workflow, and by default we had this workflow to be started manually. This could be run as a user inserts a new product automatically. Now notice our selling price in our initiation form and our approver email have been set by the workflow, and we will see how to modify initiation forms later in this module in the Visual Studio demo. But let's click Start and our workflow will start running based on these initiation parameters. Notice that the approval status has been set to rejected. Let's have a look at the rejection details, and our message that we provided in the workflow has been added as a comment. Let's add another new item, and we will call this sportsbike2010 WSD for Women's Specific Design. Again, we will choose our manufacturer of AdventureWorks, and this time, however, we will provide a selling price that is less than our currently hard-coded $3,000. So again, let's save the item and start the workflow. Okay, let's click Approve New Product, and when we click Start, of course our workflow will run. But this time our selling price was less than the maximum, so we haven't automatically rejected the product, but we have created a task for the administrator to review this new product. So there we are, Not Started Sport 2010. We have the details of this new item, we have the approval status of pending, and the administrator could approve or reject or leave this pending as they see fit. So let's put a different comment in as we approve. We will just say approved. So that's how simple it is to get started with a fairly powerful type concept of workflow in SharePoint Designer. So we've used variables, initiation forms, and initiation form parameters, and we have made decisions based on those in our workflow that affect list item data in a SharePoint site. In the next few demos, we will work with Visual Studio and we will modify things like the initiation form and so forth, but this shows you just how straightforward it is to get started.